Here we are going to use this opportunity to talk about this concept of content. Given that the NDI started its activities as early as 1996, let me remind you of a brief overview to tell you that as of 1996, this is an animated slide, so I'm going to summarize this content. So 1996, anything you need to have on internet from the statistical sites and internet sites and a small research engine, basic one, maybe Yahoo or maybe any other research engines, to have access to internet and to a few number of data. And all of a sudden, in 2018, what you should have or what you would like to have in 2018 is totally different from the needs of 1996 and from the needs of 2002, 2003, and so on and so forth. Given that the world changes and the advent of many new concepts and innovations for the last 2 decades, from 1996 up to now, and mainly with the content that you are downloading or the content that you are consulting on the websites or on the large networks is first and foremost based on advertising. And you are all aware today of the giants of the internet, or what you call the GAFA, the new rich people of the internet. They have been made rich all over the continents through a model that is based on the ads and on the advertisement spots. Quite obviously, with the notion of the VOD and the FCME and the exchange of media on the internet, the concept of e-business or e-commerce or the concept of e-logistics. Today, the Web 3.0, as well as all kinds of cloud services that are conveyed through the ISP and the CSPs, what we call the cloud service providers, and the internet service providers as well. Quite obviously, the advent of the smartphone as of 27, 28 as well, and the online microplaces, the app stores, and the marketplaces on the internet and on the applications based on the mobile devices as well. And quite obviously, there are many other things that will emerge quite soon. Earlier, we were talking about the IoT-based business or the IoT economy. In other words, the business transactions based on IoT, and then we talk about BOA. I don't know whether you've heard about the DOA, the digital object recognition. In other words, it's the layout of the digital objects, and it's more sophisticated than the OA. It's the internet of everything. In other words, everyone could have an idea on the internet. He can use a wide range of data warehouses, and the number will be quite big in terms of DOA. The big data trends for today We all agree amongst ourselves that this concept of greedy needs in terms of objects in HD or in Ultra HD, so this concept or this greediness in terms of HD reflects the idea of the video on demand or the Ultra HD and live streaming, the concept of social media HD or the sharing of pictures and of media services, and from there the concept of big data. We're going to ask ourselves a question: where are we making for? Can we have an infrastructure that is solid enough in terms of internet to build this world, or to put up with this huge explosion? The answer, quite obviously, is internet. With this infrastructure facilities today will not be able to support all this. If we are going to ask these questions, the answer will be automatically no. We cannot put up with this huge flow of data everywhere, all over the world, at least during the next coming years. This question is going to lead us automatically to another big question. Let's imagine today that we try to download video content or to our film content from a server that is located behind overseas or located on another continent. In other words, from a server that is hosted in Canada, in the USA, or in Asia. So what shall we do here? Quite obviously, we're going to have a picture that is similar to this. So this is downloading of video content or film content that is very greedy in terms of broadband from a very remote area, and we'll have a problem of technical problem on both sides of the ocean for sets of communication that are based on the content of video item that did not exist before. And then the concept of IS and the XP is going to be raised to highlight all these kind of exchanges, and also we'll have some technical problems that are related to IP communication protocols in terms of routing, and to the service quality problems related to the slow speed of the network. When are we going to receive this contact that I am busy downloading from a distant server, bearing in mind that I have to do a cross ocean or a cross country effort to get this content? Quite obviously, this design is getting more and more out of date, and it cannot put up there for today with the real problem of the internet for the end users. This is why we ask questions about the scalability or the evolution of this network. The key issues related to this layout are problems that are related, as I just mentioned, to the major media files. And today we are all aware that the concept of sharing and of the streaming, so if I have a few kilo system where I can identify thousands of TV channels, so with the IPTV I can get connected throughout the world through internet, but again I need a strong connection to ensure this kind of huge flow of video films. Imagine, for instance, your country, there is a World Cup match live on the world, so there is a penalty to be kicked and then all of a sudden your system is going to break down. So we're going to wonder what happened exactly, and did we score this penalty or not. This is one example of the challenge that we have to put up with, and this problem is due to this slow speed and to this greediness in terms of data, especially for the live streaming. So among the alternatives that could meet our needs or help us meet this challenge, among the alternatives that could help us to meet these challenges that I have just listed down, the alternative of the CDN, in other words, the content delivery network, that should be defined as follows. CDN, it's a series of servers that have been spread around the globe and designed to serve content in return. Some tests were carried out on CDNs or some CDN experiments, and which have proven that there is still a lot of work to do, and there are some other characteristics that should be provided at the level of this CDN in order to meet this kind of challenge. Therefore, we're going to ask ourselves a small question: what is the key, the layout of the CDN? And here I did on purpose to start from the Tunisian experience in order to run the CDN process. Maybe I'm going to open a quick parenthesis here about the Tunisian experience compared to the Internet Exchange Point, the Tunix P. I did have some discussions during the coffee breaks with some colleagues from the African continent, and I have described the Tunisian experience, which is unique in terms of traffic concentration. Why the Tunisian X-Base make it that all the ESPs and all the operators could share a local infrastructure prior to going for internet or for the international systems to exchange amongst themselves the flow of this traffic, and without making the traffic transit through other countries, whereas we have some other experiences on the African continent which make it that, let me here refer, for instance, I am an agent in the first floor. I'd like to send an email to a colleague on the second floor, and we are all connected in two different FSIs, but the email should go to Europe or to the States and come to the second floor, which is just above or below me. For the beneficiary. So in Tunisian, when with the XP, we can keep the content in Tunisia, we can exchange the content of the message in Tunisia, and especially when we talk about local traffic systems. So now here we can save a lot in terms of broadband and of slow speed, in terms of hard currency. Why hard currency? I'm going to explain this later. If your traffic could be kept locally. That was the local scenario in Tunisia, or the Tunisian concept that we are busy implementing to implement it at the regional level, and to interconnect the Tunisian X-Base with other X-Base systems located nearby in Morocco, in Algeria, in Egypt, up to some extent in the sub-Saharan African states, to get closer at the level of the content and to bring closer the service to the end users in order to save the pressure that is exerted on the underwater cables that connect the different continents, be it to the Americas or to Europe. So the layout is important, and the server that we analyzed earlier, and that is connected towards the American continent, we can bring it closer to an African CDN context or a North African CDN context, or simply a Tunisian CDN context as it is displayed on the architecture. Now, the idea here consists in building up a continent that is replete with X-space, and to use this concept of the caching, or of keeping the hard currency at home by bringing the content under control, especially the kind of content that is quite greedy in terms of broadband, to reach the service all over the continent. And this could give us more added values and more efficiency for downloading and for the distribution of the interconnectivity at the level of the X-space, and this should happen as soon as possible to reduce the cost of these different services, the connection cost with the international sites. Now here, what are the advantages lying behind this regional CDN systems? This could provide a lot of business opportunities, not from the content point of view, because we were talking about the content, but also it can provide a lot of opportunities in terms of big markets, in terms of operators, of internet operators, in terms of transit, to have the data connection and the traffic connection facilities, and the interconnection of the X-space amongst themselves. We can also have full access at the local level and the remote areas located in the African continent, and we can have direct access to the international servers and the national X-space all over. Quite obviously, this should have some very positive economic impact between the ISPs and the telecom operators, and even among the different countries, and it shall provide a lot of flexibility in terms of the broadband. With regards to the economic and financial benefits, the layout that we were using consisted in a layout that should go towards the curbing of the international bandwidth, and I was explaining how we could reduce the cost of the internet services or of the international bandwidth. In the past, we were connected to the research engines or the concentrators of content like YouTube, Google, and some Facebook facilities, and Twitters and other social networks. All the traffic connectors were hosted in the data centers and far away from the African continent. And quite obviously, this greediness in terms of flow that try to eat up or to consume the international links with some video contents that are quite dense and quite heavy. When at a time when we have set up this concept of CDN, we of course have east of the volume of international traffic, and I would go as far as saying we have saved hundreds of giga traffic that have been saved, so 100 of traffic giga. Now imagine how much this costs in terms of hard currency for a country or for an operator located on the African continent. Other economic benefits could derive from this operation. This could yield considerable impact on the IT sector It's nice to establish a solid infrastructure. It's nice to lay down CDNs, but it's even better to boost this content development industry, because today we are really faced with a huge problem of content at the local level, which normally should bubble up to the surface of internet. It's good to get closer to the content, but it's even better to develop this industry of content through the editors of software programs and of the hosters and the CSPs and through the content suppliers. And quite obviously, this could only entice the foreign investors to go and invest on the local platforms, because the investors would also need, amongst others, a solid infrastructure and an internet capacity that is quite high in order to be able to invest safely in the countries where they would like to invest. Quite obviously, it will be a regional platform to develop the human resources and a lot of expertise and a lot of know-how in terms of content and internet expertise. Without any further ado, I'm going to wrap up with this slide. It's true that the regional CDNs are networks that are up to date, and they figure among the top level of the technology, but there's still a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of efforts to be deployed in order to curb some of these problems that are related to the CDN and of the CDN deployment at the regional level, and be it at the level of infrastructure or at the level of the protocol or the standardization norms, so such as the multicast protocols and the protocols that are deployed to ensure the paying. And quite obviously, we have to delve a little bit more into the details to scrutinize some more ideas that evolve around the CDN and the regional CDN platforms. So I would like to stop here and thank you for your attention, and if you have questions, I'm ready.
Merci.
Thank you. I'd like to have a microphone next to me to ask the first question. Thank you for this presentation, and please, name and affiliation. Shafrawi Laris du Maroc. I don't want to look pessimistic, but the CDN or the RDC in French and the XPace are highly advanced technologies to improve our results in terms of connectivity, in terms of content. Now, can we talk about real content that deserves this kind of technology? Do we have a content at the regional level that really deserves, and in terms of content delivery, and in order to install some XPace, because of the African continent there are many XPace that are dormant. I'm sorry for the word, but because what we lack on the African continent is content. If we ask in the room here today how many people who are using the mailbox that is hosted on at the local level, I think I won't have many. Thank you for this question. The concept of content of the legal continent is another bucket of fish, and this should be the subject of another presentation, of another round of discussion. So the CDN, it's not doesn't consist in promoting the local content only. This is not the case, but the object. Now, the local content, this is a quick parenthesis that I have just opened, but the content or the concept of CDN consists in getting closer to the maximum extent the content that you are used to downloading far away from Europe or from data centers that are located outside your own country. Why? This is because it's going to ease off the bill of the international link. For instance, the African countries, let me give the Tunisian example, the Moroccans and the Algerians, probably there is a high percentage for the Maghreb citizens to use up to 80% or 70%, let's say, their traffic for the video content of the Facebook and of the YouTube and other social networks. So here we're not talking about local content. In order to bring closer this concept or to bring the downloading or the consultation of this content to bring it closer to the end user, here we have to fall back on the CDN or the XPay that should be used.
Thank you. Just the two of you. Yes, sir.
Ziad Bouzir.
My question is about the metrics that you have or that we noticed following the deployment of the CDNs in Tunisia and on the African continent. Are they really profitable? Have we measured the profit that we can generate from this kind of approaches? I did refer to this in my presentation, and I said that there are a lot of benefits or a lot of advantages lying behind this system, and these benefits are really concrete and tangible. For instance, imagine if you are doing some Facebook caching rather than to go and look for a video hosted in France or in the States, you can download it from a local server or from the national territory. It's even better if you're going to download it from nearby. Today we are talking about a whole network of local data centers. This is their job, this is their task. And when we're going to decrease the loading of the international connections, for instance, to 200 giga, to 120 giga, we will notice immediately and concretely that there will be a decrease of 60% of the international link load. Why? Because you have brought the content closer to your home, and this is quite obvious. We have an experience with the PTV in Tunisia. Today, people don't install some Sadia dishes on the roofs. All they have to do is they have a device of 100 kilo. They just stick it on the screen, and that's it. And from this receiver, we are going to pump out the pictures and the streaming from the closest data center to your home. And this is the idea. The idea is to pump out or to download this live streaming from a server that is hosted overseas, in France, in Europe, or in Asia. This is the idea. So we have here noticed a considerable convergence of the end users about this same idea.
I will want to say or ask and argue that are we not worried about the infrastructure internally? Even if when you bring these services very locally, how much of the infrastructure do you have to deliver the content as it is to homes and end users? Because I believe part of the challenge is the infrastructure outside and the infrastructure inside. Because even if you bring the content locally, how good is the content in terms of the transfer rate between the end user and where the content is located locally?
Okay. You mean in terms of money?
In terms of infrastructure.
Infrastructure. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. As I've just mentioned, in my presentation, parmi les avantages, c'est de faire bouger aussi l'industrie faire bouger l'industrie des intégrateurs d'infrastructures aussi. D'accord? Donc,
Now here to set up a CDN infrastructure, this is amenable to a lot of other infrastructure industries and to a lot of platform telecom operators and the data center integrators. This will generate a lot of other activities all around. So when we convert towards the end user, it's true that there is a whole chain that lies behind this effort. And we need about a chain of added value band from the nearest data center to the end user, to the operator data center, and the local XPay platform from the country to the regional, and then to the international XPay platforms. And the regional XPay platforms among themselves that should boom all around. But from the economic point of view, there are very obvious profits that we can generate from these processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mourad. Let's please clap for Mourad. Good presentation.